in the position of executive director, oftentimes your board asks you for you to hold space for them. What will you do to make sure that you're able to hold space for yourself away from everything going on?
I know we like to talk about rest, and I'm not very good at it, honestly. But when you talk about we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, I also like to think of it that rest is our ancestors' wildest dreams. They never got to rest, and we do. And so when I think of board and I think of the capacities that we hold, or that we need to create spaces for, I always look back into how can we encourage board members to rest while others continue the work, right? I think, well, in choosing to run, I recognize that I don't do this alone, that I also lean on my members on the board as much as they need to lean on me. And Francis had helped me recognize this, that when you choose to rest, you have to be intentional with it. You have to make sure that when you rest today, that you will come back tomorrow. That when I come back tomorrow, that I let the community rest. So in balancing the importance of leaning on each other and taking in the responsibilities that is needed at that very moment, I think we'll really hone in into the strengths and weaknesses that can strive for the board members. You know how we always say you can't serve from an empty cup. So when you don't rest, it doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't benefit you, it doesn't benefit your community. So even if it means being late on a certain project, being late on a certain event, as long as you're resting, as long as you're nourishing yourself, and as long as we're making sure that you come back healthier and stronger than yesterday, I'd rather advocate for that than pushing them to their limits, than pushing them to burn out. Because at the end of the day, our ancestors wanted us to do this, and it's almost the reparations that we are owed. And so that's the least thing we could do for them. Yeah. Hi. Hey.
So, in the past, the Samahan has been quiet on political issues that affect other marginalized communities, especially the Black and Indigenous communities outside of the Philippines. In a space that prides itself on unity and solidarity, what are some ways you and your executive board will show solidarity, especially for those who are scared to be political, for those who are scared that they have no power? How will you show that the Samahan cares?
Traditionally, historically, as you may know, Kasamahan has never been seen as a political organization. And don't get me wrong, going into college, I was also not very political. I was okay. But I think it boils down to understanding that when we, taking up the term political, right, it really boils down to the lives of these people, the lives of the Kasamas that have fallen. Kasamas, not just the people within our community, but also the people that we are with outside of the community. So in understanding that the core of it is really to show up for the people is, honestly, I feel like the core of what it means to be in unity and solidarity. I know that historically we have served our members internally, but I believe that the foundation of internal membership is so strong that if we were to lead them into a more external aspect, into more of the political world, that they will follow us. But we have to believe in ourselves. We have to let our fear not shy away from taking actions, but for us to really let that fire in you, to know that we care so much that we want to show up. I understand that it's scary because we haven't seen previous years do these kinds of work. But if you look externally, there are other people who have done the work. You will not be the first. You will not be the first person out there because there are people that are waiting for us to be out there. I had the opportunity to go out and help with the New Bataan Rage Week, and as I was standing there, we chant Maki Baka Wag Matakot, Laban, do not be afraid. And to see people from other communities, I believe there was someone that was from Yemen that stood with us and asked us like, oh, what are y'all doing? And then so we told them like what's going on in the Philippines. And when they figured that out, they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna stay here for the rest of your protest because I believe in your movement. I believe in what you're fighting for, and I believe it's so similar to what we're fighting for. But those people that come out there, they're all waiting for all of you. And that's not in a sense to like pressure you or scare you, but they're patiently waiting for all of you. When I told them I was from Kasamahan, like USF, they were so happy. There's so much like light in their faces because they see us as such a large organization. So I think to see each of us little by little trickle into those kinds of movements will mean so much. But don't be afraid because all those people will welcome you with so much love. Francis had to drop me off and had to like catch up with them because she had to find parking. So I was like surrounded by all these strangers, but they weren't strangers because these people know, like we were all there for the same reasons. And if we recognize that like our struggles are so different, but then they were also so intertwined. That one person that saw us protesting in front of the Consulate General stood with us, and even those little things has such great impact. And we have to hold on to those moments. We have to believe that even those little things can emerge into something greater. We just have to trust in ourselves that we can do it, and that our care and empathy for those people is enough to overcome the fear that has been pulling us away from these actions.
The same question I asked the reps, but out of your 3 years being in Kasamahan, what game that you've been a part of most resonates with you?
I feel like they're so connected. I'm gonna pick the first 2 yearly themes. I'm gonna pick 2. I'm sorry. Of me, like as a first year and a second year, which was Kapit Pisig and Chaka. When I started serving on board, it was hard my sophomore year. It was a pandemic, and I was losing a lot of people. And I leaned on all of y'all. The moment I lost my grandpa, I called Francis. I said, "Hey, it's Pam. How am I do this?" And she said, "Tell me what I need to do, and I'll delegate." And so she did that. And so did Andre, and so did Jalissa. And the following semester, me and Francis were having such a hard time with like Ruby Vara's management. But Francis and Jalissa talked to us, and they said, "Just tell us your vision, and we'll make it happen." And so in times when I felt like the weakest and the most incapable of pursuing or achieving the promises and goals I had for the organizations, I had board to lean onto that I trusted to continue on what I had in my mind and in my heart. And I feel like that really like ties back into Kapit Pisig, because at the end of the day, right, we always talk about like our own personal lives, but then we push on through serving the organization with our collective purpose. And I think even if my vision was a little bit different from theirs, they were still able to help me out and allowed me to persevere in the capacity that I can and welcome me when I was ready and still gave me the space when I needed to take a step back. And I think those qualities are so important. in being able to really live out like the visions and the goals of each member of the executive board.
The question I'm going to ask is less serious, but it's something, I don't know. It's just about your character. So there's no right answer, but if you were a kitchen utensil, what would you be and why? So like a kitchen utensil or appliance, anything, what would you be and why?
A utensil?
Yeah, or like appliance, like anything in the kitchen, what would you be and why?
Ooh. This is so funny because I like don't cook, but I feel like I do. Oh, okay. That's a good question. Wait, and why?
Yeah.
Or like, do I relate it to like a personality? Like,
Just and why.
Oh, and why.
Your why can be anything. There's no right answer, no wrong answer.
yeah. I'm gonna say spoon. I feel like when I was a baby, I don't remember, but I just feel like that was probably the first thing I learned to use. I feel like it's so like friendly. Stop laughing. Okay, actually I chose this utensil, or I chose spoon because of this thing that happened in clinical last week. So I was feeding a patient, and you know, like feeding a patient. This patient is like has a lot. It's like very ill, was blind, was in total care. Like I needed to be there like 24/7. So I was feeding the patient. They were very happy, and then my instructor comes in, and then she was like, "What?" Oh, she comes in and she goes, "Drop the spoon," and I was like, "Can I give the last spoon that I just did?" She's like, "Drop the spoon," because she wants us to all go to lunch all together for some reason. But anyways, and like looking back at that, it really frustrated me because if our purpose in nursing is patient-centered care, that was very much not patient-centered care. But in a sense, I feel like spoon, like in the act of feeding, is always so, like, it's so simple, but it's so important. And the same that I'm trying to take care of that patient, it's the littlest things I can do, but it's so important because that's how the patient was going to get nourished. That's how the patient was going to get through their day. Whether or not that's what my instructor wanted me to do, I kept doing it anyway. And I guess like, actually Alexa has this spoon analogy, and that's why I don't remember. Something don't feed a
Closed mouths don't get fed.
Closed mouths don't get fed. That's also just what I remembered, like thinking of this spoon. And in terms of like sharing each other's stories and sharing each other's experiences and what we've gained from one another, it also always goes back to whether or not we are open to it, whether or not that mouth is open, whether or not our minds and our hearts are open to what we're being fed with. Yes.
So you've held a lot of leadership roles in this organization, from being little community and political affairs director to what did you do? To trauma rep, skate committee, dance lead, author, a bridge for the people. What lesson did you learn through these roles, or what lesson did you learn in these roles that meant most to you, that you're going to carry into this role?
Right, I'm not ready to say it, but give me like 3 seconds. When I talk to, sorry, I'm like looking at the my experience with skate. From the get-go, Sly encouraged us to look into our values, look into what we want to share to the membership, to the audience, and what we want the audience to feel. And I remember saying the first thing I said was like, I want to shake them up. I didn't know what that meant, but I just wanted to challenge the perspective of our members and their families. But for those who may not have known, it was a tough battle because we were trying to put forth such difficult, controversial topics, and a lot of people were very scared that we were going to get backlash, that we were going to get really bad criticisms. But I was headstrong, so positive that it was meant to, that those stories were meant to be on stage. But it wasn't easy to fight for those topics because it required so much research, and it required people to believe in me. And it's not that people didn't believe in me, it's just that it felt like it needed more time. But I also felt like those topics have already been past due date. Like, for them to be on stage was already past due date. The topics that we covered were colorism, anti-blackness, and uplifting the LGBTQ plus community. What else? Well, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay, anyways, it was very difficult, and it came to a point where everyone in the community was so burnt out and so tired, but I kept fighting. I kept fighting for those topics because I just felt like it was meant to be on stage. I think one of the questions that we challenged the rest of the committee was like, why did it take 49 years for us to try to put these topics on stage? And people were like, we'll try again next year. It's 50 years, maybe we'll make the remark. And I said, what? Like, if we know in our hearts that these topics were meant to be on stage, and we have to try. We just needed people to believe in us, and we kept trying until people believed in us. But there were moments of conflicts, misunderstandings that really was very hard, and it really did hurt me in some points where people just didn't believe that my efforts with the rest of the committee weren't enough. And so there was a lot of tears, there was a lot of feelings of upset. But when I talked to Nate Magsaya recently, and in me trying to figure out if I wanted to do this or not, he asked me, he was like, Christelle, I encourage you to lean into your vulnerability. And I remember sitting in this meeting one time where I was so vulnerable, I was so hurt from just like people not believing in me, and it came to a point where it just crossed a little like boundaries and stuff, and I was so vulnerable in that room. But then later on, I recognized that everything I said might have not gone through people, which was okay because I was very vague, but it made me think that I shouldn't be vulnerable anymore. Not that I don't want to be vulnerable in any spaces, but that if I'm not understood in that space, then why would I open my heart that way? Then I talked to Nate, and he was telling me like, but that's when people hear you, and even when they don't, they're gonna keep wondering why you were so vulnerable at that moment. So I guess in a strange way of answering this question, what I've gained through all these experiences, through all these roles and leadership in Kasamahan, I think for once, I believed in myself to keep fighting for those topics. And whether or not it pushed me to be vulnerable, and whether or not it caused so much pain and so much conflicts, it was so worth it. Because people came to me after show, and they just said thank you. They were like, thank you for those stories. I remember the first time hi Deja, no. The first time we performed at UC4. Don't get me wrong, me and Nolan were changing our lines till the day of show day. Anyways, but it wasn't even our most concise and most clear words just yet. But to see that we touch at least one person's heart, even if it wasn't like the best that we wanted it to be just yet. It meant so much to us because we heard so much, enough people to tell us that it wasn't going to work out. And I know me and Nolan wrote these stories based on our own experiences. And so hearing back from our own families, the people that we've had these conversations with, was tough, but it pushed us to grow, pushed our families to grow with us. And even if it caused more conflict or it caused us to be together, we just knew that it did the job. It did the purpose that we wanted to put out there. And I feel like going into this position, I want to push myself to not let my vulnerability prevent myself from doing what I've done already, but rather continue that and hopefully encourage the board members, the members of the community to do the same and to know that whatever their heart is calling them to do, it's probably meant to happen.
First off, I'm so proud of you. This is a small question. In MC Plaza, we go by this motto: to take space, make space, and leave space. And as executive director, you're taking and making space for your community members, for your e-board, and for your people. But what kind of space are you leaving? What legacy do you want to leave behind? And what kind of seeds do you want to plant? In NC Costa, we go by this motto: take space, make space, and leave space. And as executive director, you're taking and making space for your community members, for your e-board, and for your people. But what kind of space are you leaving? What legacy do you want to leave? What kind of seeds do you want to plant?
I know even previous CSCD, we look back a lot on our past and how we can utilize that in our present to move forward to the future. But I think I want people to utilize the history and the stories that's already been told, but push them to question themselves, what is it that they want to do for themselves, right? Because it's always we're doing this for our ancestors, we're doing this for the culture. And that's not wrong at all. I love that. But it's encouraging these members to visualize what you want for yourselves. I think in what I try to push forward political actions, it goes back to again what we always say about we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. But someone said it in PCN, we also are ancestors of the future generation. And so what dreams do you have for them, right? Because it's always we are the dreams of our ancestors. But what are the dreams that you have for the future people? And how are you going to pursue that now with the knowledge that you've gained through this organization? I think the kind of legacy I want to leave is just for people to hone in more into what matters to them and how they can create opportunities for themselves that will encourage others to create opportunities for themselves. I think at the end of the day, Kasamahan is built on the passing of legacies, the passing of traditions, the passing of storytelling. But at the end of the day, it's always cultivated by the new people that come in. And I just want people to believe that they have something to give. One thing that Nate Magsayo told me recently was this organization is a gift that keeps giving. And I want people to know that there's just that one thing that they can give for the org. And I want them to be able to develop that for themselves. to grow those givings with other people too.
My question is, how will you encourage this community with other communities to talk about these hard topics, like at the stage or us just being in a room like this, to further, how do you say that? Further extend the knowledge. If that makes sense.
One more, please.
How will you encourage other people in this community and other communities to talk about these hard topics that we're talking about on stage or let alone anything that we have to talk about?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest worries that I've always heard is like people say I don't know enough. But that's okay. I also don't know enough. Yesterday I didn't know as much as I knew today. I didn't know 2 years ago that I'd be standing here right in front of you. I will meet you halfway. I will meet you where you're at. And I know these topics are so hard. Like, it pained me to hear them just as much as I'm probably hurting people when I say it out loud. But I continue to do it because I know it matters. I continue to do it because I know it'll bring out the best in people. We always say ignorant is bliss, but we don't want to be ignorant. We want to know, right? But we cannot let those knowledge continue to be casual. We have to be intentional with the knowledge that we consume. We have to be able to share those with the membership. But I will work in the pace that the individual or that group of people will be able to manage. And little by little, you'd be surprised how empowered those people are. Because those people were me and Francis at some point. I know when we talk about all these things, it sounds like we know so much, but it's just because we've been empowered by others to talk about it, even when we know the bare minimum. And I hope that when I share these things to people, that it doesn't scare them away, but rather makes them wonder more, makes them want to know more.
Your previous experience on the executive board, and going into this position, do you believe that you have to be executive director to continue to see the change that you want to continue to see in this organization?
Give a yes and a no answer. First, I'm going to say no. Because I feel like the membership knows what they want. And whether or not it be a reflection of what I want for them, I want that to be the Kasamahanda experience. So if it ends up being the one that I want, then of course, it'll be possible. And at the end of the day, I'm also a member, and I can still have that voice, just as much space as any of y'all take, to be able to push forward these kinds of activism, these kinds of actions on the board. But at the end of the day, it requires the entire community to follow through. That's my no answer. My yes answer, I talked to Rita recently. And I told her I was so scared whether or not this was meant for me, because I know it's been so hard to push for these movements and these actions on board, because we've been trying to do it for the past 2 years. And so I had to reflect whether or not this is something that I wanted to continue putting efforts for in this organization, or be able to put this time and effort into another organization. And she asked me, reflect upon whether or not what you're trying to do will be sustainable after you graduate from college. It's something that I'm not the first person to do, but rather someone who's trying to continue it and allowing it to grow, and trusting that this is what this organization is meant to do in the future. I remember talking to Francis. I was like, I see so much potential in Kasamahan, and I will keep trying with the time that I'm given in this space to push forward what I see in Kasamahan, because I know that people care. It's just that they're scared. And again, what I already talked about earlier, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not know. But I can promise that I'm dedicated to helping those people out, figure out what's holding them back. What's the barrier why are you scared? What's the barrier that's preventing you to push forward these things? I know that anyone is capable of standing here to do whatever they want to do for the org, to make the changes that they want to make to change. But for myself, I just wanted to stand here one last time to share with all of you everything that I've learned for the past 3 years, and the kind of changes that I know Kasamahan is capable of fulfilling. And it's up to you if you want to change this way or continue changing this way.
Does anyone have any more direct questions? We can. We're good. Is everyone good? Much more time if you want. It's also almost Tuesday.
Oh, let's all clap.